won't see me again.
She walked out of that lawyer's office pregnant, heartbroken,
See me
and
again.
silent. 6 years later, a single glance at a little girl's face made him realize some mistakes don't die with signatures. They grow up. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. That evening, Anne packed the apartment in silence. By morning, her name was gone from the lease, the city, and Dennis's life. What remained was a heartbeat and a promise, one she intended to keep, even if she had to start from nothing. 6 years later, in a neighborhood Dennis had never planned to visit, a little girl with hazel green eyes would smile up at a woman he once loved, and the truth he'd missed would look directly back at him. The apartment wasn't much, just a converted attic above a Korean deli on Glenwood Avenue. The stairs creaked. The radiator clanged like a dying clock. But the lease didn't ask questions, and the landlord accepted cash, and that was all Anne needed. She survived those first months on crackers and ginger tea, hunched over her laptop at 2 a.m., sending design pitches to clients who didn't know her name. Morning sickness came in waves, violent, relentless, but she worked through it. She had to. There was no safety net, no backup plan. Just her, a growing belly, and a future she was building one freelance invoice at a time. By the 7th month, she'd landed 3 steady clients. By the 8th, she'd furnished the nursery with second-hand finds and hope. When Aria Nicole Dawson arrived on a rainy April morning, Anne wept, not from pain, but from the overwhelming, devastating beauty of it. Brown curls, soft and wild, hazel green eyes that opened slowly, curiously, like she was already trying to understand the world. "Hi, baby," Anne whispered, her voice breaking. "It's just us now." And somehow, that became enough. The early days were a blur of sleepless nights and survival mode. Anne learned to design one-handed while Aria nursed. She learned to rock a bassinet with her foot during client calls. She learned to function on 4 hours of sleep and lukewarm coffee, and still smile when Aria babbled at her from the playmat. Leah Benson, a graphic designer Anne had met through a freelance forum, became her anchor. She showed up unannounced with groceries, held Aria while Anne showered, and never once asked about the father. "You're doing amazing," Leah said one night, bouncing Aria on her hip while Anne folded laundry. Anne shook her head. "I'm barely holding it together." "That's what amazing looks like," Leah said firmly. "And for the record, I'm claiming godmother rights." Anne laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Slowly, quietly, life became something other than survival. Morning jogs with Aria in the stroller, afternoons at Pullen Park, watching ducks and eating animal crackers. Bedtime stories read in funny voices until Aria giggled so hard she hiccuped. Every milestone felt monumental. Aria's first laugh, a sudden bright burst of sound that made Anne cry happy tears. Her first wobbly step across the living room, arms outstretched toward her mother. Her first word, "Mama." Anne had never felt more seen, more necessary, more whole. Raleigh, the city that had once felt like exile, now felt like home. The life she'd built wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. Stable, peaceful, full of small joys she'd never expected. Still, there were moments, fleeting, unbidden, when Aria would tilt her head a certain way, or when the light caught her eyes just right, and Anne would see him. Dennis. A ghost she couldn't shake, woven into the features of the child he didn't know existed. She'd push the thought away. Refocus. Aria didn't need a father who hadn't wanted her. She had a mother who did. And that, Anne told herself, had to be enough. But late at night, when Aria slept and the apartment was silent, Anne would wonder, just for a heartbeat, if he ever thought about her, if he ever regretted what he'd said, if he'd ever realized what he'd lost. Then she'd close her eyes, kiss her daughter's forehead, and choose to believe that some stories didn't need an ending. Just a beginning worth fighting for. The view from the 32nd floor was supposed to mean something. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Charlotte's skyline in clean geometry, steel and glass catching the evening light like scattered diamonds. Dennis Staley stood at the edge of his penthouse office, hands in his pockets, surveying an empire he'd built from brutal ambition and sleepless determination. Staley Consulting occupied 4 floors of the epicenter tower, 73 employees, annual revenue in the 8 figures. His face had graced the cover of Carolina Business Review twice. Forbes had called him the architect of corporate resurrection. He was 34 and untouchable. He was also completely hollow. The penthouse apartment, minimalist, expensive, pristine, echoed when he entered. Marble floors, Italian leather, a kitchen he never cooked in. Art he'd purchased because his decorator insisted, not because it moved him. No laughter, no warmth, no life. Dennis poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, 18-year Macallan because he could afford it now, and stood at the window, watching the city blur beneath gathering rain. He dated. Of course he dated. Polished women with impressive resumes and carefully curated Instagram feeds. Lawyers, executives, a financial analyst who quoted Nietzsche during sex. They appreciated his status. His corner table at the fig tree. His connection to senators and CEOs. None of them asked what kept him awake at 3 a.m. None of them laughed like she had. The memory ambushed him at odd moments. Anne, barefoot in their old kitchen, dancing to Nina Simone while pasta boiled over. Paint smudged on her wrist, her hair messy, her smile unguarded and real. The way she'd curl into him on the couch, sketching in her notebook while he read case studies, their silence comfortable and complete. The sound of her voice saying his name, not sharp or disappointed, but soft, trusting. He'd killed that trust with 7 words. We can't afford to be parents yet. The rain intensified, streaking down the glass like the tears he'd watched fall from her eyes that final morning. He'd let her walk away. Told himself it was logical. Necessary. The responsible choice. He'd been 28 and terrified, convinced a child would derail everything he was building. Now he had everything he'd wanted, and it meant nothing. Mr. Staley? His assistant Jenna appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. I found this while archiving your old files. Wasn't sure if you wanted to keep it. She handed him a photo, small, bent at one corner. Dennis's breath caught. Their wedding day. City Hall, 5 years before the Empire. Anne in a simple white dress, holding sunflowers because roses felt too formal. Him in a borrowed suit, grinning like he'd won the lottery. They looked impossibly young, impossibly happy. Should I toss it? Jenna asked gently. Dennis stared at Anne's face, radiant, unbroken, full of a hope he'd slowly dismantled. No, he said quietly. I'll keep it. Jenna nodded and left. He set the photo on his desk, next to the Forbes feature and the industry awards. It looked out of place among the polished tokens of success. Too real, too raw. He should throw it away. He couldn't. Something unfinished gnawed at him, a question he'd never let himself ask. Where is she now? Is she happy? Does she ever think of me? Did she hate him? Did she grieve what they'd lost, the way he did in the quiet hours before dawn? The rain drummed harder against the glass. Charlotte's lights blurred into watercolor streaks. Dennis picked up his phone, opened a search engine, typed her name, then stopped. What would he even say? I'm sorry I chose my career over our family. I'm sorry I let you walk away. I'm sorry I built everything I thought I wanted and it's not enough. He deleted the search, put the phone down. But he didn't put the photo away. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the silence pressed against him like a living thing, heavy, relentless, and utterly deserved. The rain came in soft sheets, blurring the world beyond the tinted windows of the black Audi. Dennis barely noticed. His eyes were locked on his phone, quarterly projections, merger documents, an endless scroll of demands that meant nothing and everything. "Sorry, Mr. Staley," his driver, Marcus, said from the front. "GPS took us off I-40, school zone. We'll be through in a minute." Dennis grunted acknowledgement without looking up. Then Marcus braked. Children poured from the brick building like a sudden tide, backpacks bouncing, raincoats bright against the gray afternoon. Parents clustered under umbrellas, calling names, waving. Dennis glanced up, irritated by the delay, and the world stopped. She stood beside a modest silver Honda, hair longer than he remembered, pulled into a loose ponytail, jeans and a navy jacket. No makeup, no pretense, just Anne. Older, quieter, still beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. But it wasn't her that made his breath catch. It was the little girl beside her. Wild brown curls, damp from the rain. A pink backpack shaped like a unicorn. She actually skipped, toward Anne, chattering about something that made them both laugh. Anne crouched down, brushing curls from the girl's face, and the child looked up. Hazel green eyes. His mother's eyes. His eyes. The sharp line of her small jaw. The way she tilted her head when she smiled. Dennis couldn't breathe. Time collapsed. 6 years folded into a single, impossible heartbeat. No, it can't be. But the truth stared back at him through rain-streaked glass, undeniable and devastating. Anne opened the rear door, helping the girl into a booster seat. She buckled her in with practiced ease, said something that made the child giggle, then kissed her forehead. That smile. God, that smile. The one Dennis used to wake up to. The one he'd destroyed. She closed the door, slid into the driver's seat, pulled away into traffic. "Mr. Staley!" Marcus's voice was distant, concerned. "You okay?" Dennis's hands were shaking. "Follow that car," he said quietly. "Sir?" "Follow them." His voice cracked. "Stay back. Don't let her see us." Marcus hesitated only a second before obeying. They drove through neighborhoods Dennis had never seen, tree-lined streets far from the glass towers he occupied. The Honda turned into a modest residential area, all painted porches and bicycles on lawns. It stopped in front of a small house with a blue door, flower boxes under the windows, a tire swing hanging from an oak tree. Anne got out. The little girl, his daughter, she has to be his daughter, tumbled after her, still chattering. They walked to the door hand in hand, the child skipping, Anne laughing. A normal evening, a simple life, the life he'd refused. The door closed behind them. A light flicked on in the front window, warm, golden, alive. Dennis sat in the dark car, rain drumming on the roof, staring at the house like it might disappear if he blinked. "Sir?" Marcus asked gently. "Should I?" "No." Dennis's voice was hoarse. "Take me home." The penthouse felt like a mausoleum. Dennis paced, kitchen to window, window to bedroom, bedroom back to the living room where the wedding photo still sat on the side table, mocking him. He replayed the moment over and over. The girl's eyes, her jawline, the way she moved. She's 5, maybe 6. 6 years ago, Anne had told him she was pregnant. 6 years ago, he'd said, "We can't afford this yet." 6 years ago, she'd walked away, and he'd let her. Oh, God. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. She'd kept the baby. Their baby. alone. She'd built a life, a home, a routine, a world, without him, because he'd made it clear he didn't want it. The truth settled over him like concrete. He was a father, and he'd missed everything. First steps, first words, birthdays, scraped knees, bedtime stories. 6 years of a life he didn't know existed. 6 years Anne had survived without him. The rain battered the windows. Charlotte's skyline glittered, indifferent. Dennis picked up his phone, put it down, picked it up again. What could he possibly say? I saw you today. I saw her. Is she mine? He knew the answer. Those eyes didn't lie. That face, half Anne's softness, half his own sharp edges, didn't lie. He had a daughter, and he had no idea what to do with the truth that was tearing him apart. Anne was halfway through her second cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. Aria was at Leah's for a sleepover, her first, marked on the calendar with stars and exclamation points. The house felt strange in its quietness, peaceful but lonely. Anne padded to the door in bare feet, mug in hand, expecting a package or a neighbor. She opened it, and every molecule of air left her lungs. Dennis stood on her porch, 6 years older, sharp suit replaced by jeans and a gray Henley, hair slightly disheveled, like he'd run his hands through it repeatedly, eyes shadowed, haunted. The mug slipped in her grip, coffee sloshed over the rim. Anne. His voice was rough, barely controlled. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. They stared at each other across the threshold, two people who'd once shared everything, now separated by years of silence and a truth too large to ignore. Who is she? Dennis asked quietly. Not angry, pleading. The girl, the one with your smile. His voice cracked. And my eyes. Anne's heart hammered against her ribs. The world tilted. Not like this. Not now. She set the mug down on the entry table with trembling hands. Dennis, please. Not here. Is she mine? The question hung between them like a blade. Anne closed her eyes, opened them, saw the desperation etched into every line of his face. 6 years of secrets, 6 years of survival, 6 years of protecting Aria from the father who hadn't wanted her, all of it collapsing in a single moment. Yes. The word was barely a whisper. Yes, she's yours. Dennis staggered back as if struck. His eyes filled, actual tears, brimming and threatening to fall. 6 years, he said hoarsely. You took 6 years from me, Anne. 6 years. The words hit like fists. Anne's own tears spilled over, hot and unstoppable. You were already gone, Dennis. That's not... You looked at me. Her voice broke. She steadied herself against the doorframe. You looked at me like I'd ruined your life. Like our baby was a mistake you couldn't afford. I was scared. So was I. The shout ripped from her chest, raw and jagged. I was terrified. But I didn't run. I didn't choose spreadsheets over our child. I stayed. I fought. I built a life from nothing because you made it clear there was no room for us in yours. Dennis flinched. You didn't even tell me you kept her. You didn't ask. Anne's voice dropped to something quieter, more devastating. You let me walk away. You didn't call. Didn't check. You chose your career, Dennis. I just made it official. The silence that followed was suffocating. Dennis's face crumpled. He turned away, shoulders rigid, hands clenched at his sides. What's her name? he asked finally, voice barely audible. Anne wiped her eyes. Aria Nicole. Does she know about me? No. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected the answer, but it still cut deep. I have a daughter. It wasn't a question. A realization, spoken to the air, to himself. I have a daughter, and she doesn't know I exist. Anne said nothing. There was nothing to say. Dennis turned back to face her. His eyes, those hazel green eyes Aria had inherited, were red-rimmed and broken. I don't know what happens now, he said hoarsely. But I can't just walk away again. Dennis, I can't, Anne. The weight of it, the past, the present, the impossible future, pressed down on both of them. Anne wrapped her arms around herself. She's happy, stable, safe. I won't let you upend her life because you suddenly feel guilty. That's not... He stopped, breathed. I'm not asking to upend anything. I need to know her. I need her to know me. Why? So you can ease your conscience? Because she's my daughter. His voice cracked completely. And I've already missed enough. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the porch. Dennis stepped back, ran a hand through his hair, looked at her one last time, the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd lost, the woman who'd carried the weight of his failure for 6 years. I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. Not this time. Then he turned and walked to his car. Anne watched him drive away, tears streaming down her face, her entire world fractured and rearranged. Inside, the house was silent. But nothing would ever be the same. Dennis sat in his car outside the blue-doored house for 10 full minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel like it might anchor him to reality. His daughter was inside. His daughter. The word still felt foreign, impossible, terrifying. His phone buzzed. Anne's text. She knows you're a friend from a long time ago. Nothing more. Not yet. He took a breath. Another. Then walked to the door. Anne opened it before he could knock. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back, arms crossed protectively. 20 minutes, she said quietly. And if she gets uncomfortable, you leave. No arguments. Understood. She studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. The apartment was small, warm, lived in. Crayon drawings covered the fridge. Books spilled from a shelf. A well-loved stuffed rabbit sat on the couch. It was everything his penthouse wasn't. And at the kitchen table, surrounded by scattered crayons and construction paper, sat a little girl with wild brown curls. She looked up. Time stopped. Aria tilted her head, studying him with those hazel green eyes. His eyes. And something in Dennis's chest cracked clean open. Hi, she said simply. Hi. His voice barely worked. Are you Mommy's friend? Yeah, I am. What's your name? Dennis glanced at Anne. She gave the smallest nod. Dennis. I'm Aria, she beamed. I'm 6. Well, almost 6. In 3 weeks. Almost 6, he repeated, throat tight. That's very grown up. Mm-hmm. She returned to her drawing, a house with oversized windows and a tree that defied physics. Do you like coloring? I don't know. I haven't in a long time. That's sad. She pushed a blank sheet toward him. You can use the good crayons, not the broken ones. Something inside Dennis shattered. He sat down across from her, accepted a green crayon, and tried to remember how to breathe. For 15 minutes, they colored in comfortable silence. Then Arya looked up again, scrutinizing his face with the brutal honesty only children possess. "You look like me," she said suddenly, delighted by the discovery. Dennis froze. "We have the same eyes," she continued. "See?" She pointed between them. "Green and brown mixed up." "Yeah," Dennis managed, voice breaking. "I guess we do. And your hair does the flippy thing, too." She demonstrated with her curls. "Mommy says mine won't stay flat." "Does yours?" "No." He smiled through the ache. "Never has." "Cool." She returned to her drawing, the observation already filed away, unaware she'd just destroyed him. Anne stood in the kitchen doorway, silent tears streaming down her face. When it was time to leave, Arya walked him to the door. "Will you come back?" she asked, looking up at him with such open, uncomplicated hope that Dennis had to steady himself against the frame. If your mom says it's okay, I'd really like to." "Okay," she smiled. "Maybe next time we can draw dinosaurs. I'm really good at dinosaurs." "I'd like that." She waved as he walked to his car, big, enthusiastic waves that made her whole body bounce. Dennis waved back, vision blurring. He made it 3 blocks before he had to pull over. The tears came in waves, violent, gut-wrenching sobs he couldn't control. 6 years of regret. 6 years of absence. The weight of everything he'd missed, everything he'd thrown away, and the impossible, terrifying realization that she was perfect. Funny, bright, kind. Everything good that had nothing to do with him. Anne had done that. Alone. Back at the house, Anne stood behind the living room curtain, watching the taillights disappear. Arya climbed onto the couch beside her. "I like Dennis. He's nice." "Yeah, baby. He is. His smile is like mine, too. Did you notice?" Anne's breath caught. "I noticed." Arya yawned, already moving on. "Can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" "Sure, sweetheart." But Anne stayed at the window long after Arya skipped away. The man who'd left her doorstep wasn't the one who'd walked out 6 years ago. That Dennis had been cold, certain, driven by fear disguised as ambition. This one was broken open, raw, present. And that terrified her more than anything, because she'd built walls to survive his absence. She didn't know if she was strong enough to survive his return, but watching Arya's joy, seeing the wonder in Dennis's eyes when he looked at their daughter, she knew the choice was no longer hers alone. Their story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and God help them all. The transformation didn't happen all at once. It came in small moments, accumulated like drops of rain filling an empty well. Saturday mornings at Pullen Park, Dennis pushing Arya on the swings until his arms ached and her laughter echoed across the playground. Sunday movie nights on Anne's worn couch, Arya wedged between them with popcorn, her running commentary making them both laugh. Tuesday evenings helping with first-grade homework, Dennis's billion-dollar mind genuinely stumped by the logic of Common Core math. "But why can't we just carry the one?" he'd ask, frustrated. "Because it's not the old days, Daddy," Arya would say with 6-year-old patience, and Dennis would catch Anne's eyes across the table, both of them trying not to smile. Daddy. She'd started saying it naturally, effortlessly, about 6 weeks in. Dennis had frozen the first time, eyes wide, looking to Anne for permission he didn't need. Anne had simply nodded, throat tight, because he'd earned it, not with money or grand gestures, but with presence, with showing up, with being the father Arya deserved, even if he was 6 years late. The rain came down in sheets, turning the parking lot into a shallow lake. Dennis arrived 15 minutes before curtain, completely drenched, dress shirt plastered to his chest, hair dripping. Anne spotted him from the auditorium entrance, her breath catching. He could have skipped it, could have sent apologies and promises, could have prioritized the client dinner his assistant had mentioned 3 times, but he was here, soaked, grinning, clutching a slightly crushed bouquet of daisies. "Traffic was hell," he said breathlessly. "Did I miss it?" "No." Anne handed him a program, something warm unfurling in her chest. "You're just in time." Aria played flower number 3 in a production of The Wizard of Oz that was more chaos than choreography. Her costume was construction paper petals safety pinned to a green shirt. She had 2 lines and forgot one of them. She was magnificent. When she appeared on stage, Dennis leaned forward like his life depended on it. When she delivered her remaining line, "The flowers are blooming!" he cheered so loudly that parents 3 rows ahead turned around. Anne felt something crack inside her chest, a wall she'd built carefully, deliberately, to survive his absence. Watching him now, eyes bright, completely unself-conscious in his joy, she saw a man she'd never met before. Not the ambitious consultant who'd chosen spreadsheets over fatherhood, not even the broken man who'd appeared on her doorstep 3 months ago. Someone new. Someone transformed by the simple, devastating act of loving his daughter. After the play, Aria ran to them, petals shedding everywhere. "Did you see me? Did you see?" "You were perfect," Dennis said, sweeping her into his arms despite his soaked clothes. "You're all wet, Daddy." "Don't care." He kissed her forehead. "You were the best flower in Oz." Anne watched them, this impossible picture, her daughter and the man who'd once walked away, now inseparable, and felt the last of her certainty crumble. Aria was asleep, tucked in with her construction paper petals carefully preserved on the nightstand. Dennis's coat hung over Anne's radiator, dripping quietly. Anne handed him tea. He'd showered and borrowed an old shirt she'd somehow never thrown out. His shirt, from years ago, faded and soft. "You didn't have to come," she said quietly. "In that weather." "Yes, I did." "You could have rescheduled the client dinner." "I canceled it." He met her eyes. "She's more important. She'll always be more important." Anne's throat tightened. "You've changed." Dennis set his mug down, looked at her. Really looked. The way he used to before ambition had made him blind. "You made me want to," he said simply. The air between them shifted, familiar yet new, charged with history and possibility and the terrifying question neither had dared ask. Anne reached for his mug. Their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. "Dennis." "I know." His voice was rough. "I know it's complicated. I know I don't deserve—" "That's not what I was going to say." He waited. Anne took a breath. "She asks about us sometimes, why we don't live together, why you leave at bedtime." "What do you tell her?" "That grown-ups are complicated." "Are we?" He shifted closer. "Or have we just been afraid to be simple?" Her heart hammered. "What are you asking?" "I'm asking—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "I'm asking if there's any part of you that thinks we could try again. Not for Aria. For us." The question hung between them, impossible and inevitable. Anne looked at this man, no longer the boy she'd married, no longer the coward who'd let her go. Someone remade by consequence and love and the hard work of becoming worthy. "I don't know," she whispered honestly. "But I think I want to find out." Dennis's eyes closed. When they opened, they were bright with tears. "That's enough," he said. That's more than enough. Outside, the rain softened to mist. Inside, something fragile and hopeful began to grow. The knock came at 8:47 p.m., soft but deliberate. Anne knew it was him before she opened the door. Something about the rhythm, patient, hopeful, entirely Dennis. She'd spent the evening cleaning already clean counters, reorganizing books that didn't need reorganizing, trying not to think about the conversation they'd been dancing around for weeks. Arya was asleep, clutching her stuffed rabbit, dreaming whatever 6-year-olds dream. The house was quiet. Anne's heart was not. She opened the door. Dennis stood on her porch in the rain, again. Always in the rain, like the universe insisted on poetic symmetry. But this time, he wasn't broken, wasn't desperate. He was simply there, holding sunflowers wrapped in brown paper, the same kind she'd carried at their City Hall wedding 7 years ago. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," her voice caught. "You're getting soaked." "I know." "Dennis, I don't want to fix the past, Anne." The words came steady, certain. "I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back those 6 years, but I want to build what we lost, stronger, better, real." The rain fell harder. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Anne's hands trembled on the doorframe. "I can't promise I won't be afraid. I'm not asking you to be fearless." He smiled, that soft, devastating smile that still undid her. "I'm asking you to let me prove that I'm not going anywhere, that I choose you, that I choose us, every single day. And if I'm not ready, then I'll stand in the rain until you are." A laugh broke from her chest, half sob, half something lighter. "That's ridiculous." "Probably." His eyes never left hers. "But I've done stupider things, like letting you go in the first place." Anne's vision blurred. "You really have changed." "I had to. She changed me." "You changed me." He stepped closer, rain streaming down his face. "I don't deserve another chance. I know that. But I'm asking anyway, because loving you and Arya is the only thing I've ever done that actually matters." Lightning cracked across the sky, bright, sudden, illuminating everything. Just like that night 6 years ago when she'd walked away. But this time, she wasn't running. This time, she reached out and took the flowers. "Come inside," she whispered, "before you catch pneumonia." Dennis's breath shuddered out. "Yeah? Yeah." He stepped across the threshold, soaked, nervous, hopeful. Anne set the flowers on the entry table and turned to face him. For a moment, they just stood there. Two people who'd loved and lost and somehow found their way back through the wreckage. "I'm terrified," Anne admitted quietly. "Me too. What if we mess it up again? Then we fix it." He reached for her hand. "Together. That's the difference now. We don't run. We stay." Anne looked at their intertwined fingers. His hand was warm, steady, real. "I missed you," she whispered. "Even when I hated you, I missed you. I missed you every single day." The space between them dissolved. When their lips met, it wasn't desperate or frantic. It wasn't the passion of strangers or the fire of new love. It was something deeper, quieter, healing. A kiss that tasted like forgiveness and second chances and the terrifying, beautiful possibility of building something lasting from broken pieces. Thunder rolled. Rain hammered the roof. They held each other in the doorway, breathing together, anchored by the weight of everything they'd lost and everything they might still become. "Mommy?" They broke apart. Arya stood in the hallway, rabbit dangling from one hand, hair sleep-mussed, eyes curious. "Hey, baby." Anne's voice was thick, Did we wake you? The thunder did. Arya padded closer, studying them both. Then she smiled, bright, knowing, impossibly wise for 6 years old. Are you happy, Mommy? Anne looked at Dennis, at the man who'd broken her heart and then spent months painstakingly rebuilding it, at the father who showed up, at the person who'd finally learned what love actually required. She looked at her daughter, the miracle born from loss, the light that had guided them both home. Yeah, sweetheart. Fresh tears spilled over, but these were different. Lighter. I think I finally am. Arya grinned. Good. Can Daddy stay for breakfast? Dennis laughed, a sound full of wonder and relief. If that's okay with your mom. Anne squeezed his hand. Yeah. It's okay. Yay! Arya threw her arms around both their legs. We should make pancakes. The really messy ones. The really messy ones, Dennis agreed, voice breaking. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, warmth and light and laughter filled the small house with the blue door. The past couldn't be rewritten, but the future, messy, uncertain, beautiful, stretched out before them like an answered prayer. And for the first time in 6 years, all three of them were exactly where they belonged. Together. Finally. Home. The backyard was alive with sound. Arya's laughter rang out as she chased their rescue dog, a gangly golden retriever named Pancake, through freshly cut grass. Her curls bounced wild and free, her voice high and bright as she shouted, I'm gonna get you! Pancake barked joyfully, circling the oak tree they'd planted last fall, its young branches reaching toward the sky. On the porch, Anne knelt beside terracotta pots, tucking bright orange lilies into dark soil. Dirt smudged her forearm. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. She hummed quietly, something by Norah Jones, soft and content. At the grill, Dennis flipped burgers with the concentrated focus of a man who'd learned to cook through trial, error, and YouTube tutorials. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing tanned forearms. His left hand caught the evening light, wedding ring glinting, simple gold, newly placed 3 months ago in a ceremony so small and perfect it still made Anne's chest ache to remember. This house, their house, sat on the edge of Raleigh, where the city softened into suburbs. Not too big, not too small. A swing hung from the front porch. Arya's bicycle leaned against the garage. Wind chimes sang in the breeze. It was nothing like Dennis's sterile Charlotte penthouse. It was everything. Daddy, watch, Arya called from the yard. Dennis looked up just in time to see her attempt a cartwheel, limbs akimbo, landing in a heap, giggling uncontrollably. 10 out of 10, he called back, grinning. Olympic level. You're supposed to say that, she shouted. But she was beaming. Anne watched from the porch, heart full to bursting. This life, messy, loud, beautifully ordinary, had once seemed impossible. Now it was theirs. Inside, the living room bore traces of their blended history. Anne's artwork on the walls, some from before, some new. Dennis's books on the shelves, finally opened and read. Arya's school projects covering the fridge in chaotic color. And above the mantel, a framed photograph. The three of them beneath soft rain, taken by Leah 6 months ago at the park. Arya sat on Dennis's shoulders, arms spread wide like wings. Anne leaned into his side, head tilted back, laughing. Dennis looked at the camera like he couldn't believe his luck. All of them soaked, all of them radiant. The image of a family remade. Arya was tucked in, Pancake curled at the foot of her bed. The house had settled into its nighttime quiet. Dishes done, doors locked, the kind of peace that only comes after chaos. Anne and Dennis sat on the back porch swing, a blanket draped across their laps despite the mild evening. The sky was deepening to indigo. Thunder rumbled distantly, not threatening, just present. Anne leaned into Dennis's chest, his arm warm around her shoulders. "Remember that day in the lawyer's office?" she asked softly. Dennis's hand stilled on her arm. "Hard to forget. The look on your face when I told you I was pregnant." "Anne?" "No, it's okay." She turned to face him. "I was just thinking. I'm glad we did." His brow furrowed. "Did what?" "Got divorced." She saw him flinch and squeezed his hand. "Because if we hadn't broken completely, we never would have rebuilt properly. You never would have become the man you are now. The father Arya deserves. The husband I deserve." Dennis exhaled slowly. "I lost 7 years with you. 6 with her. And you've spent every day since making up for it." Anne's eyes shone in the dim light. "You chose us, Dennis, over and over. That's what matters." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Losing you once taught me never to let you go again." "Good," she smiled against his lips, "because you're stuck with us now. Messy pancakes, terrible cartwheels and all." "Sounds perfect." They kissed. Slow, gentle, the kind of kiss built on foundation instead of fire. Thunder rolled overhead, louder now, closer, but neither of them moved. Once the sound had signaled endings, loss, mistakes carved in stone. Now it felt like applause, for second chances, for forgiveness, for the messy, imperfect, breathtaking work of building a family from broken pieces. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady. Anne laughed. "We should go inside." "Probably." Neither moved. "Dennis?" "Yeah?" "I love you." Present tense. Future tense. All of it. His arms tightened around her. "I love you too. Always did. Just forgot how to show it. You remember now." "Yeah." He smiled against her hair. "I remember." Inside, through the window, they could see Arya's nightlight glowing soft and steady. Outside, the rain fell clean and forgiving, washing the world new. And on the porch swing, 2 people who'd lost everything and found it again sat wrapped in each other, listening to thunder that sounded like promise. Above them, the storm raged gentle. Below them, the foundation held. Around them, love, tested, broken, rebuilt, stood strong. This was their beginning. Again. Finally. Forever. Some love stories end in divorce. Some begin there. The rarest ones do both, and become something stronger for the breaking. Thank you for watching to the end. I believe you enjoyed it. We have a lot of other interesting stories like this lined up for you already, so click the image showing on your screen to watch the next. Don't forget to subscribe.